was audience reaction. Viewers didn't see a monster. They saw a quiet depth beneath the logic. Nimoy later wrote 2 memoirs that captured his evolving relationship with the role. The first title, I Am Not Spock, and years later, I Am Spock. On November 22, 1968, Kirk and Uhura shared a kiss widely cited as one of the first interracial kisses broadcast on American primetime television. What's less known is how hard NBC fought to soften it. The network demanded the scene be rewritten so the kiss appeared to be forced by telepathic aliens rather than chosen by the characters, giving nervous affiliates in the South a built-in excuse to dismiss it as something other than a genuine romantic moment. Shatner and Nichols, however, had other plans. During filming, they deliberately flubbed every take where their heads stayed apart, leaving the director no usable footage except the version where the two actually turned toward each other. The network got its disclaimer, and the actors got the real moment they wanted. Nichols later recalled receiving a letter from a white viewer in the South who said the scene had made him question beliefs he'd held his entire life. Star Trek was never a ratings powerhouse. After the first season, NBC began floating cancellation. After the second, the talk grew louder. What happened next had almost no precedent in television history: organized fan campaigns. Estimates suggest well over 1 million letters flooded NBC's offices across 2 separate campaigns, alongside petitions on college campuses and fans demonstrating outside network headquarters, all without the internet or social media. It worked twice, with NBC renewing the show for a 3rd season and even announcing the decision publicly at a convention. That 3rd season turned out to be the weakest, hampered by a shrinking budget and a burial in a late Friday night time slot, and the show was ultimately canceled in 1969. But that extra season gave Star Trek just enough episodes to qualify for syndication, the decision that would change everything. The 11-foot filming model of the USS Enterprise, Registry NCC 1701, was painstakingly detailed, but only on the surfaces a camera would actually see. Every shot was composed from the side or above, so the underside of the hull was left rough, bare, and unpainted in places. Since there was no reason to spend time or money finishing a part of the ship no one would ever view on screen. The original model now resides at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum, unfinished underside and all. It's one of the most quoted lines in pop culture, printed on shirts and mugs for decades, and even echoed by astronauts aboard the International Space Station when actor James Doohan passed away. And yet that exact phrase never appears anywhere in the original series. What Kirk actually says varies. Beam us up, Scotty, Scotty, beam me up, or simply Enterprise, beam me up, but never precise wording that became legend. It's a phenomenon that shows up elsewhere in pop culture too, from misremembered lines in classic films to famously misquoted literary detectives. Proof that a phrase can become more iconic than anything actually said on screen. With an entire universe of alien civilizations to depict every week, the wardrobe department had to get resourceful. Hollywood studios in the 1960s kept massive costume warehouses stocked with decades of film and television wardrobe, and Star Trek's costume team raided them constantly. Roman togas became ceremonial alien robes, old Western saloon outfits turned into the attire of distant civilizations, and aging science fiction B-movie suits got fresh paint and new insignia. It was resourcefulness dressed up as imagination, and on a television screen, the illusion only needed a hold for a few seconds at a time. Starfleet's signature sidearm began life as ordinary novelty ray gun props already sitting in the studio's prop inventory. The design team modified them with new paint and added detailing to make them look more futuristic, though the plastic build and slightly off proportions were noticeable up close even at the time. Decades later, the concept helped inspire real-world interest in directed energy weapons research, a toy gun repainted into the blueprint for actual military technology. The Trouble with Tribbles remains one of the show's most beloved episodes, but what it doesn't show is the chaos happening off camera. The Tribble props were simple builds, synthetic fur stretched over foam, with tiny motors inside some to simulate purring. Under the hot studio lights, that synthetic fur built up serious static electricity, causing the props to cling to costumes, furniture, and camera equipment, and giving crew members repeated small shocks. The production team had to develop a system for discharging the props between takes just to get through filming safely. Fans everywhere recognized the red shirt, the disposable crew. Long before streaming platforms went to war over subscribers, before superhero movies took over every multiplex, and before the internet gave every fandom a voice, a small, underfunded science fiction show dared to imagine a hopeful future among the stars. It debuted on September 8, 1966. Nobody expected much from it. The ratings were weak, the budget was thin, and yet Star Trek. The original series went on to become one of the most influential works of science fiction ever produced. What most fans don't know is how much of that legacy was built on accident, improvisation, and sheer stubbornness. Here are 20 strange, surprising stories from behind the scenes. When Gene Roddenberry first pitched the show to NBC, William Shatner wasn't part of the plan. The network had already committed to Jeffrey Hunter, an actor best known for portraying Jesus in King of Kings. Hunter played Captain Christopher Pike in the original pilot. Serious, introspective, and every bit the thoughtful leader Roddenberry envisioned. Then he backed out. Accounts differ on why. Some say his wife discouraged him from committing to television. Others say he simply thought the project was beneath him. That opening let William Shatner step in, bringing a bolder, more theatrical energy that reshaped the show's entire tone. Tragically, Hunter died just 3 years later at 42, never seeing what the franchise would become. Roddenberry's early notes described Spock with reddish skin, giving him an almost sinister, otherworldly appearance. Concept art leaned into this unsettling look. But there was a practical problem. Most American households in 1966 still watched television in black and white, and red skin would have rendered as an unervingly dark tone, sending the wrong message entirely. The production team pivoted to a subtle greenish-yellow hue instead, light enough to read cleanly on monochrome sets. Ironically, once the show aired in color, most viewers barely noticed the tint at all. It was the pointed ears that ended up doing the heavy lifting for Spock's alien identity. Ask any fan to name their favorite piece of Star Trek technology, and the transporter usually tops the list. But the truth is far less romantic than the concept itself. The original plan called for the Enterprise crew to travel down to planets using a shuttlecraft, a visually impressive but extremely expensive effect to produce episode after episode. Facing a budget crunch, the production team needed something cheaper and fast. Their solution: film sparkling dust falling in front of a dark backdrop, then reverse the footage. The cost was a fraction of building and filming a shuttle landing. What began as a cost-saving trick became one of science fiction's most iconic inventions, one that physicists and engineers still reference when discussing the theoretical possibilities of teleportation today. Most shows only get one shot with a network. Star Trek got a rare second chance. The original pilot, The Cage, was submitted to NBC in 1965 and rejected outright, deemed too slow, too heady, and lacking enough action. Executives reportedly also balked at the idea of a female first officer, played by Majel Barrett, having so much authority. Instead of scrapping the project, NBC took the unusual step of commissioning a second pilot. Roddenberry reworked the concept. Out went the character number one. In came Kirk and Spock, along with a punchier, more action-driven tone. Rather than waste the rejected footage, Roddenberry later repurposed The Cage into a 2-part episode called The Menagerie, which went on to win a Hugo Award, making the once-rejected pilot the only Star Trek episode ever to receive one. In 1960s American television, simply being cast as Lieutenant Uhura was groundbreaking. Nichelle Nichols was one of the first black women to play a position of real authority on mainstream TV. Not a servant, not a sidekick, but a bridge officer. Still, after the first season, she was ready to leave for a career on Broadway and had already submitted her resignation. Then, at an NAACP event, she was introduced to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who told her that Uhura mattered, that for the first time, young black children could see someone who looked like them portrayed as a skilled professional working alongside equals at the highest levels of human achievement. She withdrew her resignation the very next day and later described the conversation as one of the most defining moments of her life. Today, Nimoy and Spock are inseparable in the public imagination, but early on, Nimoy had real doubts. He worried the pointed ears and alien features would make the character look more like a monster than a hero, and feared being permanently typecast. On top of that, playing a being who suppressed almost all emotion required him to completely rework his instincts as a trained, expressive performer. What changed his mind?